I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that Spore is a core childhood memory. Am I right?
Yeah!
Designing a creature brick by brick and following it through billions of years of evolution all the way from a single cell to a spacefaring species was the coolest concept ever. When we think back on all the time we spent creating absolute freaks in the creature editor when we could have been going outside or making friends, we honestly don't regret a minute of it. So the other day I went down a nostalgia hole and I started looking for some Spore content on YouTube. That's when I found this. A recording of the first time that Spore was ever shown off at GDC 2005, 3 years before the game released in 2008. But this isn't how I remember the game. In fact, it's better. I don't remember the walking animations looking this good, or blood effects, or being able to drag the bodies of your enemies through the mud. In a million subtle ways, this version of the game just seems like a much smoother experience than the one we remember. In fact, if you go to the comments of this video, you'll see plenty of people echoing similar sentiments.
It actually makes me genuinely angry watching this now.
Why did they give us such a horrible version? This would have been so much better!
How in the living fuck do you go from this original concept to what Spore ended up as?
All of this made us start to question the rose-tinted memories we have of this game. Is it really as different from that tech demo as we remember? Was Spore even a good game? Or were we just, children? After GDC 2005, the hype train had officially left the station. I mean, just listen to the energy in this room.
This is the Ford Explorer, like, whoa!
For years, everyone was talking about this crazy new game that was on the way, all the way up until 2007 when it was set to release. Never mind. Still, the hype didn't die down, not even from the perspective of the publisher, Electronic Arts. That year at the DICE Summit, EA CEO John Riticello stated, "It's probably the greatest creative risk maybe going on in the game industry today. I believe it's going to be one of the greatest franchises in our industry, and will rival World of Warcraft, or The Sims, or Rock Band. It's going to be right up there." In retrospect, that quote sounds ridiculous, but it clues you into just how high the expectations for this game were at the time. So what happened? Why didn't this game live up to its hype? And more importantly, if you set aside the expectations and the nostalgia, does Spore work from a design perspective?
The released game works in 5 distinct stages: cell, creature, tribal, civilization, and space. You create a creature and you make your way through each stage by completing certain tasks in each one. Each stage acts as its own complete game, progressively becoming more in-depth as the complexity of your species and civilization grows. It was an incredibly ambitious project at the time, and we wanted to see if Spore still holds up today, both to the expectations of the gaming world at the time and to our own memory. So we played through the whole game and then wrote this hour-long script so we could tell you guys all about it.
After deciding whether our creature was an herbivore or a carnivore,
I think we should be carnivores.
Agreed. Let's destroy anything in our path.
and then arriving on the planet in a meteor shower, we were plopped right into the gameplay, after a brief pop-up tutorial. Your goal is simple: eat enough food to grow and gain DNA points, attract a mate, do the deed.
Woo! Yeah!
Baby!
Use DNA points to edit your cell, rinse and repeat until the bar at the bottom grows enough to allow you to move on to the creature stage. Now, the most interesting part of that is the ability to edit your cell. The quote-unquote cell can be morphed and manipulated into any shape you want, as long as that shape is vaguely cylindrical. But here's the cool thing: the placement of the parts you choose matters. If you put spikes on your head, then you'll be able to kill things with more ease, whereas if you put them on your sides or behind, you'll be more protected from other cells trying to eat you. How you design your cell has consequences out in the world and will affect how you play.
Do we want big ass spike or a small?
Oh
ass
yeah,
spike?
we want a big end spike.
If it's smaller, they'll come in closer, and we can turn around and fuck them up.
It's like the 1-2 combo.
Yeah.
There's even some basic paint jobs for you to choose from to make your cell sexy. As you progress, you'll unlock new parts to add to your cell by slaughtering the poor bastards that are attached to the parts you have yet to acquire. There's about 15 parts in total in the cell stage, and they're all fairly unique in what they do, like the zapper that'll zap, or the poison spewer that'll spew. As your cell grows and you evolve, you'll be greeted by newer scenery, including big plants to munch on, more complex varieties of cells, giant seashells, big scary cells in the background, and big scary cells in the foreground. The decisions you make during gameplay will also have an effect on what abilities and traits you get later down the line in the different stages. During the cell stage, if you eat a lot of plants, then you'll be an herbivore in the creature stage, whereas if you eat a bunch of meat, you'll be a carnivore instead. What path you finish under will determine what abilities you get in future stages. This is a cool way to reward different actions based on how you play. We named ourselves Morbo, no relation, and made a vow to kill everything we came across.
Oh yeah, pick on that little goldfish.
We destroyed all who stood in our path, devouring them whole. Nothing could stand against Morbo, eater of cells, not even the most daunting of foe. All will bow to Morbo.
After swimming around in the ocean for a half an hour, we finally made it to land and began the creature stage. Now, this is where things finally get interesting. The power of the 3D creature editor is now in your hands, and it's a ton of fun to play around with all the different kinds of looks for your creature.
Oh my god.
That's
I
the
like
worst
that.
thing you could have done.
The body of your creature can be shaped and molded to look exactly how you want. It's surprisingly intuitive to move it, make certain sections bigger or smaller, or increase the length of it. It almost feels similar to working with clay. And perhaps most impressive, the game will procedurally generate all the animations for your creature. So no matter what you create, the game will figure out how that creature will move. I seriously cannot overstate the fun there is to be had in this editor. All of the parts are wildly customizable and are usually pretty easy to adjust to get exactly how you want it. The more decorative parts have no collision, which is great because it allows you to combine 2 or more parts to create a specific look. Most of the parts you find will also give your creature certain stats and abilities, and this is where the game sacrifices some of your creative freedom in order to gamify the experience. Maybe you really like a certain hand and you think it fits well with the creature you've designed, but this other hand here is just a straight upgrade from it stats-wise, so why would you ever go with the first hand? Ultimately though, when you move on to the tribal stage, it lets you edit your creature one last time so you can dial in the look exactly how you want it, as the stats for your creature don't matter from there on out. You also get to paint your creature and mix and match all kinds of designs and colors. It's much more in-depth than the options you're given at the cell stage, and I never really felt too limited with what I could do. You can make really pretty and fun designs or something really disgusting, which is what we elected to do.
Maybe this creature is just cursed with not having skin.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so angry.
I do wish you could add fur or feathers to your creature, but considering this game came out in 2008, the tech just probably wasn't there at the time.
There is something, though, that is quite disappointing, and it's a big one. The placement of the parts you choose no longer matters like it did in the cell stage. It doesn't matter if your mouth is on your front or on your butt, you'll bite the exact same way. It doesn't matter if you've got 15 legs, your walking speed and how you walk will remain the same. This is great for creative freedom and being able to create monstrosities like this, but is this a creature that would actually be able to survive in the wild? Probably not. As a result, any creature you create will be able to fully function and survive, which entirely eliminates any intriguing gameplay related to trying to come up with a design that not only looks cool, but can also thrive out in the world. This, in my opinion, might be the most disappointing part of the entire game. The potential that was available here for unique and interesting gameplay never seen before was so massive, and that's the reason why this game was hyped to death before its release.
You'll notice he has a rather non-standard leg configuration. But still, he moves very smoothly, very realistic, very lifelike.
Imagine if the placement of parts mattered and actually factored into how your creature functioned. The creature with longer legs would likely easily be able to outpace a creature with shorter legs.
So this guy just happens to have a very fast walking gait. And it's a property of kind of the way the procedural animation deals with that skeleton. So a lot of the kind of performance of these guys is going to be emergent, from the system.
A creature that was too top-heavy would probably fall over trying to support its own weight.
This is the Ford Explorer, like, whoa!
Instead, we get a any design works philosophy for the game, which makes the game more friendly and more approachable, but also makes the experience much duller. There's a lot more to say about this, and all these ideas were considered during the development of Spore, but we'll go more into that later. And that brings us to the most annoying component of the creature editor, the part limit.
We're getting close to the complexity meter already.
This is what I felt constrained by the most. I understand that it's there to help with performance, but 14 years later, performance isn't really an issue anymore. It really doesn't help that they use these weird dots to convey the information instead of just a simple progress bar. Like, just give me a goddamn bar. But overall though, the creature editor itself is super enjoyable, and you can spend hours meticulously crafting a bunch of creatures exactly to your liking.
After you finish designing the beginnings of your creature, you are let loose into the world, free to explore at your leisure. We, of course, designed Morbo to be a terrifying killing machine, and we planned on slaughtering everything we saw, sparing none. Although we did decide to make friends with these little freaks because they seemed nice.
It would be funny to just be friends with this piece of shit, but murder every other species.
Coming from the cell stage, this really feels like you're moving up in the world. You have a full 3D environment to explore, and you receive your very own nest to share with others of your species. There's a hunger bar now, too, that you have to manage, and you'll have to eat fruit or hunt prey depending on whether you're a carnivore or an herbivore, or if you're an omnivore, you can eat either. Other nests dot the map, and this is where you'll find most of the other creatures. When you approach one of these nests, the game will give you an objective. Make friends or make a dinner. I do like how if you fail to impress a creature, they just kinda look at you like, hey, what the fuck? If you don't make friends, then you'll be exterminating all of them instead with what is essentially an extremely basic MMORPG combat system with only 4 attacks. It's just as engaging as it sounds. Completing the objective at a nest is how you acquire DNA points in the creature stage, which will act as a currency for parts in the editor, just like the cell stage. You're gonna need a lot of DNA points if you want to evolve your creature, and that's also how you fill up your progress bar and move on to the next stage. This means that you'll have to complete a lot of creature nests, and while it's a little fun at first, it quickly becomes uninteresting as you're kinda just doing the same thing over and over again. While you're out and about interacting with different nests, you'll find skeletons littered across the landscape that you can dig up, and it'll give you a part to add to your collection. The bigger the bones, the better the part. It's always satisfying finding a really big skeleton and digging it up, not knowing exactly what you're gonna get, but knowing that it's gonna be good.
You can also find these spice geysers that will launch you up into the air, which is kind of fun.
Whoa, it's like a Fortnite.
It's like a Fortnite, bro.
The creature stage quickly becomes a game where half your time is spent having fun in the editor, making whatever wacky ideas come to your mind.
Oh my god.
Oh,
No.
And the other half is spent walking around trying to quickly grind your way through several nests until you have enough DNA points to have fun in the editor again. It turns the creature stage into a fairly mediocre experience when revisiting it. Maybe now you might start to see why I said that the biggest disappointment in this game is the fact that the morphology of your creature just doesn't matter.
Do the creatures dynamically attack based on where their weapons are?
They don't.
Now, the way he's fighting is based upon where I put his weapon, which is on his tail.
When every creature feels the exact same way to play, it sucks out all the variety and fun that could be had trying to design wacky creatures and seeing how they could survive. That, coupled with uninteresting gameplay, makes the creature stage a unique experience for sure, but mostly unengaging for more than an hour. But it's not all bad. While the graphics have certainly aged quite a bit,
It's not that bad.
it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a little bad.
the game still manages to have compelling scenery. And this is where I feel like I should mention that this game is absolutely brimming with charm. The passion and love the developers had for this project is extremely clear, and it shows in almost every aspect of the game. The fact that the main menu and world selection screen is a galaxy, the fun mating dances, the silly reactions of your creature when you add or remove parts from it, the spaceships that will come and abduct some poor bastards.
Hey, baby. Why are you scared? Oh, shit.
The timeline chart, the loading screens, all of this feels like it comes from a place of genuine care for the game. None of these details feel like they were designed in a publisher's meeting room trying to figure out the best way to strangle profits out of a product. Charm is exactly what Spore does best, and it even makes up for some of the more lackluster elements of the game, in my opinion. We would be remiss if we didn't mention perhaps the most charming part of this game, the music. This music is composed by the legendary ambient rock artist Brian Eno, also known as the guy who produced the fucking Windows 95 startup sound. Yeah, he's legit. I didn't really appreciate the score when I was a kid, but looking back, it might just be the most memorable part of the whole game. Like so many other elements of this game, this music is not pre-recorded, but rather generated procedurally. There's a link in the description to a podcast explaining how all that works if you're interested, although it's over my head. Eventually, as you progress through the stage, your brain will grow large enough to figure out how to effectively use tools and harness the power of fire. And we're finally ready to enter the tribal stage.
The tribal stage marks a pretty big turning point for how the rest of the game is going to look and feel to play. This is where the game goes from a third-person evolution survival game into a top-down strategy game, and not a very good strategy game either. The tribal stage in particular is really shallow, extremely buggy, and the editor doesn't make up for it this time. The only thing that saves this stage is how short it is so you can move on quickly. Okay, alright, maybe that's a little harsh, but this is easily the worst stage in the game.
Fuck the tribal stage!
I know that as a kid, I felt really smart commanding my guys around and eventually becoming the top tribe of the region. Coming back to the game now, it's clear to me that I was just a dumb kid that was easily entertained.
All my homies hate the tribal stage.
But what exactly makes this stage so bad? It starts off showing an overhead view of your tribe, and at first glance, it doesn't look like it'll be particularly terrible. After you finish gathering your bearings, the game directs you to enter its editor for this stage, the Tribal Outfit Editor. Here you get to add various clothing items like hats and masks or fun decorative parts. All the clothing items also have differentiating stats, just like how it worked on the creature stage. Because you're just playing dress up with your creature now, instead of actually changing and morphing your creature, this editor inherently becomes less interesting than the creature editor. Honestly, the whole editor for this stage feels tacked on rather than a central part of the game, which just turns it into a mediocre strategy game without anything compelling about it.
After you finish your tribal outfit, it's time to learn the mechanics of this stage and how everything works. It controls like a standard RTS, where you can move the camera around the map, select units, and then tell them where to go or what to do. You can make them fish, tame creatures, grab tools. You can use said tools to pillage neighboring tribes and burn down their buildings, religion, culture, people, and heritage all to the ground. Or you can have them dance. I like making them dance, that's always fun. As you might expect from such a major change of genre from the creature and cell stage, the gameplay loop here is also quite different. Now the goal is to gather food, which acts as a currency as well as sustenance for your tribesmen.
It's a lot of eggs.
Deviled eggs.
Buy buildings to equip the tribe members with various tools, go and either ally with or kill surrounding tribes, unlock their items, dance around the fire for a bit of fun, and then do it all over again. Remember how we said you could select your guys and tell them to do something? Well, that would be true if it worked most of the time. A lot of times your guys will just get confused and won't be able to figure out how to pathfind to an area.
Why'd they all go home?
It happens so often that the developers had to add a little question mark above their heads to let you know that this dummy couldn't get to where he's going. When you tell your guys to go eat, they'll try to line up, but they can't always seem to figure it out, so they'll just stand around sniffing glue until you tell them to go do something else and retry.
These guys are doing nothing. They're trying to put their food back in like the thing, but they're too stupid to figure out how to do it.
It is very similar to The Sims in that way, honestly.
This problem persists throughout the entirety of the time you're playing, and it only gets worse as you go on. It's a frustrating march through to the end, and it's a big reason why I'm glad this stage is so short. This is the only area in the game that seems to be this buggy. Once you complete a tribe, you'll unlock new tools and clothing items, and a totem in the color of the tribe will appear on your totem pole. There is another reward you get for completing tribes, though, and that is once you complete enough, your village will get an upgrade. The animation for this is nifty, and it's pretty satisfying watching your village slowly progress over the course of the stage. Each time your village upgrades, you're able to add more members to your tribe, which is incredibly useful, when they follow your orders anyway. And that's basically the whole tribal stage. Not bad, not very interesting though. There's still loads of charm, of course.
I think this stage is charming. Like, I like all the little things that the guys do, and
It's fun to watch them like interact and walk around and live their lives.
I love it when you give a tribe a gift, and your chieftain will take a gift basket and this music will play as you make your way over. Or when you tame a creature and this music plays and you put it in your pen. One time, a UFO came and abducted our pet in the pen.
no!
So we had to go and get a new one. These kinds of things are just fun and make the game a more delightful experience to go through. It still doesn't really save the tribal stage from being boring, though. I think it's quite clear that the tribal stage got the short end of the stick in terms of development time. The editor barely has any parts to choose from, and conquering other tribes through combat or friendship gets old quickly. What could be done to improve it? Honestly, either cutting this stage entirely or just merging it with the civilization stage would be the best way to go about it. I don't really feel like this stage adds anything to the game, and it would have been a better choice to have the development time spent elsewhere.
After conquering all of the other tribes in the region, our Morbos are having dreams of bigger and better things. Mostly a bigger house, so we get to work and are greeted with the building creator.
Okay, we get to build a city hall now.
One of the many different editors in the civilization stage. You know how these work by now. Drag and drop the parts from the left and slap it onto your design space, except instead of a creature, it's a building. Here, however, you are given complete creative freedom. No stats to worry about, just you and whatever your measly little brain can come up with. It's definitely not as fun to mess around with parts in this editor. In the creature editor, your creature will react to different parts you give it, and it adds a layer of charm to the experience, but here you're just looking at a dull gray block, at least to start with. The good thing is you can add a bunch of different dull gray parts until you get something that looks building shaped. You can also paint your dull gray parts with all sorts of fun colors and textures. You can individually paint sections of parts, and you can get really detailed with it if you want to. It takes a long ass time to individually paint every little section though, so thankfully they give you presets, which is what we used most of the time. After finishing our Morbulon Hall and Gallows, our Morbos start discussing the possibilities of our new civilized lifestyle. Immediately they suggest nuclear bombs, tanks, and muffins. I've never been so proud of our bloodthirsty creation. And then...
We're about to enter civilization.
Oh baby. Excuse me?
The game crashed. So after quickly recreating our Hall and Gallows, we're immediately thrusted right into another editor, the Land Vehicle Editor. You know, I've got to say, having to go through 2 different editors in a row is a little exhausting, but it's necessary for how the civilization stage works. Thankfully, the Vehicle Editor is way more engaging than the Building Editor. You have a lot of creative freedom when it comes to creating these vehicles, and mixing and matching parts is super fun to play around with, but you have to consider stats again, which prompts decision making, which makes the whole editor a little more interesting. Like the creature stage, the decisions you make aren't really that complicated or hard to make, but the fact that they're there gives you something to consider in the background. It's also different from the stat decisions in the tribal stage because these stats actually feel like they matter. You have a nice visual representation on the side here telling you how much health, strength, and speed you have. It's also interesting because affecting one stat will affect the others. For instance, if you add a big gun to the back of your vehicle to increase your strength, then it's also going to decrease the health and speed, making it a balancing act of making sure that you have the right stats that you think will work best. Again, it's not super complicated or hard to understand, and I think that really works in the favor of this editor, and it makes it one of my favorite editors in the game, just behind the creature creator. We decide to model our vehicle off an ant, and I really love this design. It feels really unique, and it's fun to watch it walk around the planet, especially when you have a full army of ant vehicles at your disposal. Once you're finished with your city hall and your vehicle, you're finally shown what the civilization stage looks like, and you are given your first task. Claim a spice geyser. Easy enough, we send our ant buddy over there and he claims the geyser for the Morbo Nation.
Riding around bug vehicles, collecting spice. It's just Dune.
Spice geysers slowly give you money over time, so owning a lot of them will add up and will give you an edge over the other empires. It's also just a really cool progression from seeing these spice geysers in the creature stage to now being able to conquer them and exploit them for your own benefit. After completing that mission, we're tasked with creating a profitable city. As you can see, we're currently struggling in this regard, but hopefully not for long. It's at this point we're finally given full access to the city planner. We have the buildings tab where we can create and edit our various buildings from houses, factories, entertainment, and our city hall, as well as place turrets for defense. Then we have the vehicles tab, which works in much the same way but for land, water, and air vehicles. Then there's the decorations tab, which lets you place cute little objects around your city. They don't do anything, but they do look neat. You also have the music editor, which will procedurally generate music for your city based on the instruments and tone you choose. And finally, you have the outfitter for your citizens, which works in the same way as the tribal editor, but with some new city-esque parts for a more civilized age. It's also entirely cosmetic, and the parts don't contribute to any stats. Now, in order to make our city profitable, we need a stable income, and in order to do that, we need a factory to make our workers work in as unsafe conditions as possible. The general Morbo population isn't really happy with being forced to work in deadly factories, which I really can't imagine why, but we figured they might need a distraction before they unionize. So that's why we decided to create every Morbo's dream entertainment center. Dong City, the giant penis-shaped strip club.
Woo! Yes! Yes!
Yeah.
God.
Dong City proved to be a ginormous success, and now our Morbos are satisfied. Our city is finally profitable.
We decided to make our navy vehicles next. We stuck with the animal theme and modeled our ship off of an alligator, which I think is the creation I'm most proud of. He's got claws and guns for nostrils. What more could you want?
With all of our basic needs met, it was time to expand our Morbo Empire. We started claiming more spice geysers, and that's when the Forest Nation was founded. They were right next door to us, which was their first mistake. Sure, they might seem friendly, but that's just a facade, for we know that the Morbo nature is naturally aggressive and warlike. As such, the only way to win is to be the ones to strike first. Ah, but wait, The Forest Nation aren't the only ones to worry about, as the Orange Nation has also settled on our continent, as well as these red bastards. It's at this point where civilizations start popping up all over the place, and our plans for world domination must be set forward. In order to dominate the world, we need a strong capital city to start from, so we got to work optimizing our city. You see, just placing buildings all willy-nilly isn't going to work. You have to consider the location of the buildings in relation to one another. All these colorful lines show you the benefits and consequences of placing a building in that specific spot. It's simple and easy to understand, and it's pretty satisfying finding the best spot for a building, even if it's not that hard to get it right. Now that we have a solid foundation, it's time to set our plan into motion. The Forest Nation was the first to go, taken out by a mere 6 ants. Bah! Pathetic.
You are now at war with Orange, Blue, Yellow, and Red Nation.
Alright,
Shit.
bring it on.
The Orange Nation tried to preemptively attack one of our cities with music. Ha! Laughable. Music is nothing compared to missiles. They're beaten into submission. The one true Morbo Nation will reign supreme.
Yeah! Morbo!
With the continent conquered, we now have access to the power of the skies. Airplanes. We can make airplanes. Continuing our theme, we create a dragonfly with lasers. At this point in the stage, the rest of it is a cakewalk. The airplanes are so powerful that it makes the land and water vehicles basically worthless. You can focus all your efforts into making a military made up entirely of planes and then take out the rest of the cities pretty quickly, which is exactly what we did. The strategy that was involved here was pretty minimal, if non-existent.
We destroyed that city in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
There's some diplomacy, but it doesn't get too complicated beyond, hey, here's a gift so we can be friends. And sometimes, the other civs will contact you and ask to go to war with someone for them or something, but that's basically it. It was fun up to a certain point, and then the rest of it was just trying to rush things up so we could move on to the main meat of the game, the space stage. As always with this game, the charm was still abundant here. At one point, a gigantic Morbo attacked one of our spice generators, so we took him out with dragonflies and ants. It felt like a Godzilla movie. Watching your citizens hanging out in the city can be fun. Here's some doing push-ups. The Civ stage isn't amazing, but it does do what it set out to, and at least it works consistently, which is more than what I can say for the tribal stage.
By the way, what's up with Maxis games and folks just randomly dropping down to the ground to do push-ups whenever they feel like it? Nobody does that, Maxis. And finally, here we are, the space stage. This is what we've all been waiting for. Seeing as over half of the game is spent in the space stage, this is where they should be giving it their all. So, does it succeed in this regard? The answer is a resounding, kinda? A little bit? Almost? Sure, almost. The space stage has a lot going for it. You play as a space captain, exploring the frontiers of space, expanding your empire, terraforming planets, engaging diplomatically with other spacefaring nations, making allies, betraying your allies' trust, and absorbing them into your grand Morbo empire. All with the goal of making it to the center of the galaxy. It's all a great foundation for a fantastic experience. What matters, however, is the execution of these ideas, and Spore again yields mixed results. Every space captain needs a starship, and you begin the space stage by creating your very own. The starship editor works essentially the same as the vehicle editor. It has all the same parts, but with some extra space-specific parts. Yet again, they forego stats entirely and just allow for complete creative freedom. You only need to use the editor once in the entirety of the space stage, and that's in the very beginning when you create your spaceship. It's an incredibly huge missed opportunity, and the entire stage suffers as a result.
We did have a ton of fun creating our spaceship and playing with different designs and parts, and I wish the space stage was more of that. We again stuck with the animal theme and created a whale, nicknamed the Leviathan. After completing a basic tutorial on how to use the ship, our captain, Morbulus Blowhorn III, was ready to go.
How did we come up with Blowhorn?
No idea.
Our captain, Morbulus Blowhorn III, was ready to go out and conquer the stars. Our first mission, which was basically just a continuation of the tutorial, was to investigate the possibility of other signs of life around our solar system. Okay, cool. Done. Turns out, pretty likely, and now we're being asked to go colonize another planet in a different solar system. To create a colony, you must first buy a colony and credit pack. The placement doesn't really matter, it just has to be next to a spice geyser. Once it's placed down, it'll terraform a large amount of the terrain around it to be flat, so if you try to put your colony somewhere cool, like on top of a mountain like we did, it's just going to destroy it, which is pretty unfortunate. The colony you've placed will now act just like how a city would in the Civ stage. You can place buildings, edit music, whatever you want. You just can't purchase vehicles as there's not really a reason to anymore. Colonies will harvest whatever color of spice is available on the planet for you to reap the rewards from. More colonies on a planet and a higher T-score will increase the spice holding capacity of the planet, and optimizing the colonies the same way you would in the Civ stage will increase the rate of spice generation. The T-score, or Terra score, is essentially the measurement of how habitable the planet is, and a higher T-score allows you to build more colonies on the planet. Here's the cool thing though, you can terraform planets and increase or decrease the T-score of one at your will by using certain tools that you can purchase, and then planting trees and bringing in animals. So if you want, you can really focus on optimizing each of your planets to get them to generate as much spice as possible. We didn't do that. Instead of expanding tall, we expanded wide, and I definitely don't recommend doing that, and I'll get to why later on when we talk about war. After successfully colonizing the planet again...
No, you didn't mishear that. There's actually a planet called Again.
After reporting our success, we were asked to go and find other intelligent life in the universe. Okay, done. Let's talk to these fools, shall we?
And here enters the diplomacy screen, your primary way to communicate with the other measly empires. If the empire has a job for you, then they'll give you one. Although I will say most of the time it's not really worth the effort. Most of the missions given are either uninteresting fetch quests, or go kill 5 of these animals on this random planet. There are, however, missions that are much more exciting that let you touch down on planets as your space captain. These are called Galactic Adventures, available only if you purchase the Galactic Adventures DLC.
So what was awesome is you could create your own levels, and they would appear in other people's games. So you'd be playing user-created levels.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
The community-made levels are definitely hit or miss and are pretty weird at times, but they're also full of little gems of creativity and interesting showcases of the various creators' possibilities. The DLC also gives players the opportunity to see their creature walking around in the space stage. And this really makes you feel like a bona fide space captain rather than just some dude who hangs out in the cockpit the whole game. Overall, the Galactic Adventures DLC was a great way for the devs to mix up the gameplay without needing to devote hundreds of hours into making all kinds of missions.
Trading is a big part of this stage and is the main way to make any progress. Thankfully, Maxis manages to make trading intricate enough to be engaging, and yet still straightforward enough to allow my underdeveloped frontal lobe to understand it back in the day. This is where all that sweet, sweet spice you've been collecting from the colonies comes in. Remember how we said there were different colors of spice? Well, different colors will go for a different amount depending on supply. If you're trying to sell red spice to somebody whose own planet already has red spice, then they're really gonna lowball you on the price. But if you bring in some of that pink spice, whew, well boy howdy, now we're talking. It's very basic supply and demand, and its implementation here is well thought out.
Holy shit. We're about to make nearly $1 million.
But wait, there's more. Each empire will offer you different sets of tools which you can unlock to upgrade your ship, and all at different prices too. So it's good to shop around before you make an impulse buy on a mega laser. Your own empire will sell you everything that you've unlocked, so if you can't find the item you're looking for, you can always buy it there, as long as you're willing to spend a premium.
As Morbo's been making a name for themselves, they've developed a hunger for universal domination, and they set their sights on the ultimate goal.
I mean, we can start going closer to the center of the galaxy.
Your progression toward it is indicated by this bar at the bottom, and these little icons represent badges in the badge system. There's a large variety of badges, all with 5 different tiers requiring different tasks to be done in order to acquire the badge. Acquiring a badge will give you badge points, which will increase your title and rank once you have enough points, all the way from Commander to Omnipotent. Aside from giving you badge points, badges will also unlock new tools and upgrades that you can purchase for your ship, and the item you receive will always correlate with the task done for the badge. For instance, completing more combat-heavy badges will reward you with more powerful lasers and bombs, or completing more exploration-focused badges can reward you with better interstellar drives, which lets you travel farther. This creates a system where the player is always working towards something and never at a loss for what to do. Once we finish all of the tutorial missions and we're left to our own devices, what do? Start a war, of course.
Ha ha ha! Get fucked!
Oh, damn. It turns out taking on an entire empire's home planet by yourself with just a measly little laser is not a good idea.
We need backup. I mean, we can't take them by ourselves.
We might want to get some allies or something.
Unfortunately for Morbo, the only way to get other ships to join you is by making allies with another empire and asking them to send one of their fighters. This is a problem, as Morbo only works with Morbo.
Do we really need allies if we just have big enough guns?
We decided,
okay, we'll get an ally and we'll betray them later.
And we made allies with the Shale Empire. However, what we found is that when we went into battle with our new allies, it turns out that they suck.
Both of our allies have died, like, immediately.
This is why you don't make any friends. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
So, as we knew from the start, Morbo is superior to all and needs no other allies. I have no idea why they added this limitation of only allowing you to get other ships from your allies instead of just filling up your party with your own ships. Maybe they wanted to incentivize making allies? That would make sense because, as we're about to get into, the Morbo playstyle does not work very well in the space stage, and it's a shame. So, while the space stage does offer you complete freedom to play however you want, not all of those playstyles are well realized. Becoming a warmongering nation that destroys everyone in their path is one of those playstyles that the game's systems just don't really support very well.
Now let's talk about war.
This is where you can show off your combat prowess, shooting missiles at oncoming ships, bombing cities below, and dodging and weaving between enemy fire. That makes it sound more exciting than it is. In reality, all you're really doing is clicking on enemy ships until they go boom, and occasionally backing away. Same process for capturing cities, just click on it with your bombs until they surrender. Once you capture all the cities on a planet, the planet is yours for the taking. Take all the planets in a system, and the system is yours. Usually there's only one colonized planet per system, and only a couple cities per planet, so the process goes by quickly. Sometimes your enemies will attack you back in these timed events, and you'll have to rush to the planet's defense and fight back. We don't know what happens if you fail one of these, because it's always pretty easy. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's war. There's not much strategy to it, no units you have to worry about, no front lines you have to manage. Empires will never declare war on you unprovoked, at least from what we experienced, just run and gun until you win. I imagine the developers knew that this aspect of the space stage wasn't all that exciting, but part of the tough decisions of being a game developer is knowing what to cut and what to focus your efforts towards, and I believe that most of the war experience was on the chopping block. It would also explain why they seem to incentivize making allies and disincentivize anything regarding war to expand your empire. In fact, it almost feels like you're punished for expanding too wide. And boy, did the Morbo empire grow. We grew so quickly that it was almost overwhelming. We never really bought colony packs because we didn't have to, but that upside also has a pretty major downside as well. You see, the more star systems we control, the more spice we can collect and sell. Cool, great. The problem is that to collect all of the spice, you have to travel to a system that contains a planet that has spice waiting for you, zoom all the way in, go to the planet with the spice to collect it, wait for all the animations to go by, and then zoom all the way out, and then rinse and repeat, possibly 40 or more times depending on how much your lust for power has corrupted you. Not only that, but there's no way to tell which systems have spice waiting for you and which don't, and because it's so easy to lose your sense of direction as there are no compasses in space, you'll end up just revisiting the same star systems over and over again that just don't have any spice ready for you yet.
Gosh, I keep flying to planets that don't actually have spice in them.
These spice runs would take so long and were so boring that I would dread spending money on things, because that would mean I'd have to go and get more money, and the quickest and easiest way to do that is a spice run. One thing that would help is if there was some kind of indicator that communicated how much spice is ready to be collected, so I didn't have to keep revisiting the same planets again and again. I really like this idea, as it would make spreading your empire wide an actually viable playstyle, rather than a punishment.
But see, if you build tall, and try to maximize how much spice you can get per thing, then you don't really have to deal with this. Going wide and taking over empires is just the least fun way to play the game, to be honest.
It's a shame, but the space stage does have things to do outside of managing your empire and conquering others.
Things such as exploration. With over 100,000 stars available for you to visit in the Spore galaxy, there's bound to be lots of interesting things to find. And this is true, at least for a little bit. When you first set out on your journey among the stars, you'll be finding all sorts of things like different collectibles, strange planet formations, new spice colors, fascinating star formations, black holes, and more. There's definitely a lot to find, and you'll discover new things at a fairly steady pace too, as long as you're looking. Also, if you enter a black hole, provided you have the proper equipment, you'll be warped to another black hole somewhere else on the map. It's a unique form of fast travel, but you'll have to remember which black holes go where, so take notes.
I was wrong. This was not the right black hole. Fuck.
After a while, though, you'll start to find some of the same things over and over, and it definitely makes exploration lose its luster. You can also find some planet terraforming tools as well, which are cool, but only aesthetic. After a bit of time progressing your way through the game, your empire will eventually ask you to discover what's at the center of the galaxy.
He said something important. I clicked through his stuff because they usually never say anything important. Fuck.
Upon first glance, this seems like an easy enough task, just zip through the stars until you reach the center. But on further examination, you'll discover that it might be a bit harder than you think. When you start getting closer to the center, you're told that gravity is a lot stronger around these parts, and the distance you can travel start becoming smaller and smaller until you can't move at all. The only way to get through it is by having a maxed out interstellar drive. Not only that, but you'll have to deal with the Groks. We haven't mentioned the Groks yet, but they're actually introduced early on as a mysterious, likely evil and ancient alien civilization.
Initializing self-defense code Groks 999.
Their territory encompasses the entire central area and surrounds the galactic core, which is an issue. If you want to get to the center, you'll have to make enemies with the Groks. This ended well.
Holy shit, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die.
Once you have the maxed out interstellar drive, you're ready to take on the Groks and get to the center of the galaxy. It's kind of a frustrating experience, honestly, because where you're able to fly isn't exactly clear.
The closer you get to the center of the galaxy, the shorter you can go. It's like I can't get over to any of these stars. It's kind of like a goddamn maze. I don't know, they gave an explanation for it, and I think it was something to do with the gravity.
You're shown the circle, and everything in that circle is a place you're able to fly to. But the problem is, the map is actually 3D, so certain stars that look like they can be traveled to are actually out of range. With the circle constantly changing size too as you make your way to the center, it can be really annoying. Especially since you're constantly being attacked by the Groks, with the only way to fight back being this dumb little auto blaster that does jack shit. But finally, through all of our trials and tribulations, we made it to the galactic core.
The galactic core.
The galactic core.
The galactic core.
From a simple single-celled organism to space-faring fascists, we've truly come a long way. What lies in wait on the other side? Let's find out.
Greetings, my friend. You have traveled very far and overcome many obstacles. Your heroic efforts have proven you deserving, worthy of advancement to the next level of your existence. It is now time for you to join us. Join us. No, just kidding. It's not scary. Some of you may ask, who is this mysterious voice who knows so much and possesses such great powers? I'm glad you asked.
I'm Steve. You are now to be given the power. The power to create and spread life, intelligence, and understanding throughout the cosmos.
Steve said something about Earth,
Just look for the third rock from Spore.
so we set off on a journey to find it. After many grueling hours, scouring the stars, searching for any trace of the treasured planet, I'm kidding, we looked it up. Once we arrived, our hopes and dreams of what Earth would look like were shattered. There's nothing here, it's literally just Earth, which is cool, but I mean, you're not gonna put a human empire or something on here, or a cool collectible, or the damn free breakfast that Steve promised us? Blow this shit up.
Boom.
The journey from initial idea to finished product was a long and rocky one, with various ideas and concepts falling by the wayside as the team behind Spore struggled to create a game that would be both fun and true to Will Wright's vision of a life simulator. But what happened? How did Spore fall so far from its playable prototype? There's the obvious changes from GDC 2005, like the ragdolls, body dragging, and dynamic attack animations. That much is addressed in a GameSpot interview with Chaim Gingold.
That is not a real name. That is not a real name.
Sorry, Chaim.
Do you want to do an accent for
We
this?
should do an accent for this.
Spore's design team quickly discovered that there were myriad challenges within a mergent editor that embraced open-ended creativity. It had to be easy and fun. It had to satisfy a broad range of fantasies and expectations. The output had to work in the animation system and with the game's rule sets. Constraints were applied to the editors that maximized the possibility of well-designed creatures while minimizing player confusion on how to build them. There was a conscious, and as Gingold describes it, necessary, choice to reduce the breadth of the editing tool.
This is symptomatic of a larger shift in priority that was occurring within the team at the time, a general push for simplification of the game's systems. This article from the now defunct Seed magazine sheds more light on it.
Now this here was Spore's central problem. Could the game be both scientifically accurate and fun? The prototyping teams were becoming lost in their scientific interests. Spore's resident uber geek and artificial intelligence expert Chris Hecker was having strong misgivings about how appealing all this hard science would be to the wider world. I was the founding member of the Cute team, he says with pride. Ocean and Will were really the founding members of the Science team. Ocean would make the Cell game look exactly like a petri dish with all these 2-scale animals, and Will would say, "That's the greatest thing I've ever seen!" And some of us were thinking, I'm not sure about that.
We also found a thread on the Spore forums from a user called Mflux, claiming to be an ex-internet Maxis who claims to have worked on Spore. He says his name is Michael Flux Chang, and he appears in the Spore credits. There's lots of people calling BS in the comments, but if we go to the credits, his name is indeed there, and he does go by the same username on other social media, so it seems plausible that this guy's legit. Here's a quote from that thread.
For instance, creature morphology actually mattered. This implied deeper strategy to creature creation. You have small inkling of this in the cell stage where placement of parts somewhat mattered. For example, spikes placed behind your creature saved you from being bitten when chased. But the strategy that earlier prototypes implied went beyond placement of parts.
Will Wright and Ocean Quigley had this idea of something that was more tech demo than game. Some might argue that would have still been a more successful product, but there's no denying it's not for everybody. And it didn't help that EA was expecting the next World of Warcraft. They couldn't afford to make a niche game.
In 2013, Soren Johnson published a retrospective to his blog outlining what he learned from working on Spore. In his own words,
Spore's biggest issue was that the play at each stage was fairly shallow, because the team was making 5 games at once. At one point, Will described each of the game's 5 stages as light versions of the classics. Cell is like Pac-Man, Creatures like Diablo, Tribe is like Populous, Civilization is Civilization, and Space is Masters of Orion. However, making 5 games at once is a bad idea. Making one good game is usually hard enough. Each of the 5 stages had different controls, different interfaces, different nouns, different verbs, different goals, and so on. Some effort was made, of course, to share ideas and elements across stages. However, the compromises involved often watered down what was supposed to make each stage distinct in the first place. For example, each stage required a friendly means of engaging with other entities. In the creature stage, this mechanic became dancing for other creatures to make friends, while in the civilization stage, this mechanic translated into attacking other cities with music instead of bullets. Neither mechanic was the best idea for its own individual stage, and the justification was high-level consistency.
the game ends up feeling like a meandering journey through worlds that lack focus, identity, and purpose. It presents a wide variety of possibilities without following through on any of them, and without ever excelling at anything. There are some interesting parts and a lot of fun to be had playing it, but it never really becomes more than, it's kinda neat. But, as kids, coming into the game with absolutely zero expectations of what it should be, we were thrilled. The game for us was everything it needed to be, and it had an impact on each of our lives.
Hey guys, Ovalsoza here, and welcome to episode 12 in my Spore Let's Play series.
Sure, the game isn't as good as it could have been, but that will never take away from the fact that Spore was a meaningful part of our childhoods. If you've never played Spore before, then it's definitely worth a playthrough. At the very least, it's worth playing around with the creature creator, which you can actually download for free right now by going to http://
The link in the description.
Make some wacky creatures and share them with us in the community in our Discord server.
Also, if you want to see our full Spore playthrough, I've edited down 21 hours of footage into one 3.5-hour video that you can watch right now, available for channel members only. Thank you very much for watching.